I'm Erin Creasy, and I'm joined with Matt Hilliard-Ford, who's one of our program consultants and works on the IDP. I see from the audience here that there are many people who have applied to the industry development program in the past, and some maybe names that I don't recognize. So I will, just for everyone's very broad information, let you know that this is the program that's specifically for not-for-profit trade and event organizations. So we only support not-for-profits through this particular program. It's the only one of its kind, program of its kind that Ontario creates. And it's also a relatively smaller budget program, as most of our dollars go to directly to company support at Ontario Creates. So we'll probably, Matt will tell you what we're going to talk about today, with a bit of a focus on some key program updates for this year. And you could hear that recording started. So we're going to record us talking today. When we're finished talking, we will turn the recording off, and then we'll give you a chance, if you like, to join us on video and ask questions. And I'll also add that other program consultants who work on this file are with us too, just in the audience, and we'll elevate them at the end. So if you have specific sector questions, you'll probably be able to ask the appropriate person at the end. So over to you, Matt.
Thanks, Erin. Welcome, everyone. As Erin said, my name is Matt. I'm one of the program consultants here at Ontario Creates. And we are going to be looking at the industry development program. We're going to be looking at the eligible applicants, requirements, eligible activities, funding levels, DEI, is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and accessibility, and looking also at program updates, deadlines, project delivery timing, and the application schema. This is a brief overview, so please do read the program guidelines prior to applying. Make sure that you're very aware of the detailed information prior to applying, and we very much welcome conversations with you before you begin your applications, just to ensure your organization eligibility and the project eligibility, and we're happy to discuss that with you. All right. So, as Erin was saying, we provide support to Ontario's established trade and event organizations, non-profit, not-for-profit, and we support projects. So what that means is we support time-specific activities that have measurable outcomes. So this is not operational support. This is specifically for projects that we require the information for in the application. And we're considering incurring expenses as the project, so we support expenses that that are incurred as the project, as the planning unfolds for the project, and for the, if it's an event, for instance, for the event itself. Erin, feel free to jump in because I mangled that like crazy.
It's okay. We'll talk about it a bit more when we get to time.
Okay, cool. All right. And the program has two separate streams. One is capacity building, supports strategic projects that address challenges, opportunities, or environmental changes that expand company capacity, and business development, supports business-to-business industry projects and business-to-consumer audience development projects that create business leads, sales, and relationships. If you're unclear on which stream your project is best suited for, again, please feel free to reach out to us, and we are happy to discuss that with you. Okay, and all this information is in the guidelines. So again, we direct you to the guidelines. There's no need to make notes on these slides specifically, or what we're saying, this information is in the guidelines. So again, reiterating, incorporated not-for-profit, Ontario-based or national organisations. 60% of a national organisation's membership must be Ontario-based. Eligible organisations are delivering strategic projects with long-term impacts towards expanding skills, business capacity, market share, sales and innovation. And the applicant company must be recognised as a trade or event organisation that serves the interests of Ontario Creates stakeholders in one or more of the sectors that we support, and must be an established organisation in operation for at least 1 full year. So we're looking for projects that support our stakeholders. It may be supporting the capacity of the organisation that's applying, or it may be an event or activity that they are creating or hosting that supports the stakeholders in a particular sector. One thing that's important when you're considering a project for your application is that there must be measurable results for Ontario companies that fall within the sectors that we support. These can include professional development programs, knowledge sharing and networking events, development incubators and accelerators, marketing activities such as online hubs, advertising campaigns, events, showcases, activities that connect Ontario content with audiences with measurable outcomes, workshops, panels, pitching events, showcases and meetings, and mentorship programs. So again, we want a really clear sense of both what the project is and what the anticipated outcomes are. Those both need to be clearly articulated in any application that you submit. Ontario Creates mandate is one of economic development of our stakeholder group. So that's the bottom line that we look at when we're assessing applications, is how do these projects create stability, sustainability or growth for our stakeholder groups.
So over the past few years, we've identified a few priority activities as part of the program, and those familiar with the industry development program will not be surprised by this, because they're the same priority activities that we've had in place for the last few years. I just wanted to explain a little bit about what that means. So as Matt indicated on the previous slide, there's a really wide range of activities that we can and do support regularly in the program. We've identified gaps and needs for skills development, mentorship, and activities that help increase workforce capacity, diversity and inclusion activities, and any kinds of marketing and discoverability opportunities, be those marketing projects or B2B opportunities, B2C opportunities. So those are some of the sort of the lens that we look at the applications as they're coming in through. And I wanted to talk a little bit about skills development, mentorship, and increased workforce capacity specifically, because we get always a lot of questions about what kinds of activities are eligible. And Matt mentioned that we're supporting activities that relate directly to our stakeholder group. So if we looked at like the book publishing industry, our stakeholder group would be the publishers, not the authors. On the film side, our stakeholder group would be the producers, not the writers or directors or other crew. But when it comes to how we are looking at diversity and inclusion and the development of the whole ecosystem of the sectors that we support, we can be a little bit more flexible in terms of what we would consider our stakeholder group and eligible activities. So when we're looking at meeting diversity, inclusion, and equity objectives with certain programs, we can be a little bit more broad in the types of skills development and mentorship projects that we might be able to support. So for example, we on the film side support below the line mentorship training with the Indigenous Screen Office for Indigenous crews and on specific projects. That's one example. But we've supported over the last couple of years many different kinds of mentorship programs that have different target audiences than what the program typically encapsulates. So I can answer more questions about that at the end, but it's something that when we have one-on-one meetings, we tend to talk about this a lot. So I thought this is a good opportunity to kind of explain that a little bit further to the group. So Matt, do you want to go to the next slide? Thank you. So the next slide, this is in our guidelines, like all of this information, but a little bit of our goals around diversity, equity, inclusion when it comes to this program and actually all of the programs that we offer at Ontario Creates. We have an expectation that applicants proposing projects that support, reflect, and strengthen diversity and gender parity are able to tangibly demonstrate a genuine and sustained commitment to these equity-seeking communities. And we give you some specific spaces in the application where you can explain your activity, your organization, and how you would sort of fit into those overall objectives that Ontario Creates has around DEI. It's also part of our scoring criteria that you can see in the guidelines as well. And next slide, accessibility. So again, in our guidelines, but something that we really want to reiterate the importance of. We're very welcoming to applications from people who have disabilities, people who are deaf, and people who have barriers accessing technology. We do have an opportunity for people to request an alternative process or format for submitting an application. So please reach out to us directly if that's the case. And we can support, we have some limited funds to support people who might need service providers to assist with application preparation. And we also have some support for successful applicants who might need supplementary funds for accessibility expenses that are required to complete project deliverables. So that's something that we would talk to successful applicants about if that's the case. All right, back to Matt.
All right. So funding is provided in the form of direct grants towards the costs for the eligible projects that you might be applying for. You cannot exceed 75% of the total approved budget, so 25% has to come from other sources. Awards are typically in the range of 5,000 to 35,000. And just to give you some understanding of where the IDP is in our suite of funding programs, the majority of our funding programs, or all the other funding programs, are for companies. So direct support for companies for specific projects. So this is quite a distinct program within what we do. The budget is relatively small, and I'm sharing that because I want you to manage your expectations. So we sometimes receive applications, particularly from first-time applicants, with they're sort of pitching for the maximum. Please give us a call first, so we can discuss what your project is, the amount you're anticipating requesting for funding, and we can discuss that with you and give you an idea whether it's realistic or not. Would hate for you to put in an application for a very high ask that when we receive it, we know we might be interested in supporting you, but not at that level, which could potentially then jeopardize the project for you. So the more in sync our expectations are, yours and ours, the more likely we are to be able to support you in a way that's meaningful for you. All right, and we have some program dates. So we had, up until this point, 3 deadlines per year. We've now shifted that to 2 deadlines per year. The reason is that it was the 3 deadlines amongst our other program deadlines was a real challenge for our team here to deliver the program decisions in a timely manner. It's frustrating for us. We feel the stress of that and the pressure of that, and we know it's frustrating for you to be waiting a long time for program decisions. So the intention here is that we can get back to you much sooner with the notification about our funding decision.
And then to go along with that, we've also changed and added some more flexibility for you all in terms of project delivery timing. So the first element of this is that activities must commence no more than 3 months after the application date. So what this means is that our expectation is that you're getting started on your activity, i.e. incurring expenses, starting your planning, whatever it is that you need to do for your activity, no more than 3 months after you apply to us. And then from that date that you start, you have 12 months to finish your project. So this is helping us kind of expand our flexibility. Before we had sort of chunked the year into 3 different segments for event timing. And what we want to do with this is give you an opportunity to hear from us sooner in your process. So you know whether or not we're able to be supportive well in advance of actually having to complete your activity, and giving you a much longer and clear window with which that activity can be completed. So a couple of examples here. If you, let's say you applied to us at the April deadline and you wanted to start right away. So you started your activities, let's say on April 15th, 2022, then you would need to be all wrapped up by April 15th, 2023. But there is some flexibility in terms of when you can start. So if you were starting in May or in June, same thing, you would have 12 months from that start date of your activity to complete it. So while we only have 2 deadlines, it does mean that you can apply much more in advance of your actual event and have our support with you for the whole length of your project. This first year with these new timelines is a bit of a transitional year because activity is taking place from April to June. So if you have an activity happening right away at the start of your fiscal year, you'll want to get your application in. You may have already started your activity. That's okay for this year. But what it means is you might actually apply twice during this year. So you might apply at our April deadline and get our decision in as timely manner as we can possibly get it to you. But then you would want to probably apply again at our August deadline for your activities for next year, as long as it was in that delivery window. So you can talk to us about specific timing if you have questions about when to apply. But in general, a rule of thumb is you have about a year to complete your activities after the application date.
Okay, and the application form, it's in the online application portal, which I know many of you are familiar with. The application form has been updated, so please review it prior to the deadline. Again, you'll select the program stream that most closely aligns with your activities on the application form. So there's a button in the form. You just click whether you're applying for capacity building or business development. And the guidelines include a summary of the application requirements. So the main categories of information that we're looking for, that you will then see in the application schema itself. And if you haven't applied before, we highly recommend that A, you call us, B, if you're eligible and your project's eligible and you're going to go ahead with an application, is to register with the online application portal. It's a process that's managed by our IT team. It can take a couple of days, so it's not something that you want to leave to the last minute. You want to get that done a few weeks in advance of any of the deadlines.